Burmese pythons have transformed the entire ecosystem of South Florida. After arriving here as seemingly innocent pets, these snakes have overrun their new environment in just a few decades.
What could possibly hunt one of the most feared predators in the Florida Everglades? Scientists believed Burmese pythons had become nearly unstoppable, spreading across the wetlands while devastating native wildlife. But during a routine tracking project, something impossible began happening. Radio transmitters from dead pythons started moving again, leading researchers to an unexpected discovery that may reveal the Everglades is beginning to fight back in ways no one anticipated. The invasive species that nobody could stop. Long before scientists discovered that something in the Everglades had started hunting Burmese pythons, Florida was already fighting a battle it seemed destined to lose. What began with a handful of exotic pets eventually grew into one of the most destructive wildlife invasions in the state's history. Native to Southeast Asia, Burmese pythons are among the largest snakes on Earth. They can grow beyond 18 feet in length, weigh more than 200 pounds, and overpower prey by wrapping their muscular bodies around it until it can no longer breathe. In their natural habitat, these snakes are part of a balanced ecosystem. In Florida, however, they arrived with one enormous advantage. Almost nothing was prepared to stop them. The invasion began through the exotic pet trade, which brought thousands of Burmese pythons into the United States. As many owners discovered, the small, manageable snakes they purchased did not stay small for long. Caring for a giant constrictor quickly became overwhelming, and some owners released them into the wild. The situation became even worse after Hurricane Andrew struck South Florida in 1992, damaging a breeding facility near Miami and allowing additional pythons to escape. By 2000, scientists had confirmed that the snakes were successfully reproducing in the wild, marking the beginning of a rapidly expanding population. Since then, Burmese pythons have spread across more than 1,000 square miles of southern Florida, including Everglades National Park, Big Cypress National Preserve, and nearby wetlands. Their success is no accident. Their intricate patterns make them nearly invisible among grasses and marshes. They can remain motionless for weeks while waiting for prey, and a single female is capable of laying between 50 and 100 eggs in a single clutch. Even more alarming, biologists estimate that only about 1% of the Burmese pythons living in the Everglades are ever detected. Every captured snake may represent dozens, or even hundreds, still hidden in the landscape. Conservative estimates from the U.S. Geological Survey place the population at tens of thousands, while some projections suggest the true number could be much higher. The consequences soon became impossible to ignore. As python populations expanded, native mammals began disappearing from areas where the snakes had become established. Long-term wildlife surveys revealed staggering declines. Raccoon sightings fell by more than 99%, compared with the late 1990s. Opossums dropped by nearly 99%, while bobcats declined by almost 88%. In the hardest-hit regions, marsh rabbits, cottontail rabbits, and foxes virtually vanished, and white-tailed deer populations fell by more than 90%. The damage reached far beyond the animals the pythons consumed. Predators, such as bobcats, struggled as their food sources disappeared, while endangered Florida panthers faced shrinking prey populations. Entire food webs began to shift, transforming one of America's most unique ecosystems into something scientists had never expected to witness. Florida refused to stand by as the crisis unfolded. Hunters, wildlife agencies, and researchers launched increasingly ambitious efforts to slow the invasion. Yet, despite removing thousands of snakes, one troubling question remained: if humans couldn't stop the pythons, was anything else in the Everglades capable of doing it? The dead snake that wouldn't stay dead. By this point, Florida had accepted a difficult reality. Completely eliminating Burmese pythons was no longer considered possible. Instead, the goal had shifted toward controlling their numbers and slowing their spread before even more of the Everglades was transformed. The state invested heavily in that effort. Programs such as the annual Florida Python Challenge encouraged trained participants to search the wetlands and remove as many invasive snakes as possible. During the 2025 competition, a record 294 pythons were captured by 934 participants from across the United States and Canada, with the top hunter removing 60 snakes in just 10 days. At the same time, Year-round removal teams continued searching the Everglades, contributing to more than 23,500 pythons removed through various programs since 2000. Despite those impressive numbers, scientists knew the battle was far from over. Burmese pythons are remarkably difficult to find. Their camouflage blends almost perfectly with the surrounding vegetation. They spend long periods hidden from view, and standard survey methods detect only a small fraction of the population. With females capable of producing up to 100 eggs in a single clutch, every successful breeding season added thousands of new snakes. Removing them helped, but it wasn't enough to erase an invasion already deeply rooted in the ecosystem. Then, an entirely different investigation produced a discovery no one had anticipated. Researchers from the U.S. Geological Survey had implanted radio transmitters into Burmese pythons to monitor their movements and survival. The devices were designed to send a mortality signal whenever a snake died, allowing scientists to recover the carcass and determine what had happened. But some of those signals refused to stay where they should. Instead of remaining motionless, a few transmitters began traveling through the Everglades again. At first, the readings seemed impossible. Dead snakes don't crawl away. Yet the signals continued moving, leading researchers farther into the wetlands. The mystery became clearer during a study that tracked 19 hatchling Burmese pythons between May of 2021 and February of 2022. One transmitter eventually led scientists to a cottonmouth with an unusually large bulge in its body. X-rays confirmed the surprising truth. The venomous snake had swallowed the young python whole, transmitter included. Another signal ended up inside a king snake, which carried the device until it eventually passed it naturally. As researchers examined the remaining transmitters, an even bigger pattern emerged. The pythons weren't simply dying. They were being hunted by animals that many scientists had never expected to see targeting this invasive predator, and the list of unexpected hunters was only beginning to grow. Is the Everglades finally fighting back? As scientists continued analyzing the tracking data, they realized the cottonmouth and kingsnake were only part of a much larger story. Of the 19 hatchling pythons monitored during the study, 5 were eaten by alligators, 3 were likely taken by mid-sized mammals, such as bobcats, and 3 more became prey for cottonmouths. One young python even died after attempting to swallow a rat that was more than twice its manageable size. For the first time, researchers had clear evidence that several native species were beginning to recognize Burmese pythons as food rather than an untouchable threat. The discoveries didn't stop with hatchlings. Over the past several years, dramatic encounters involving much larger pythons have also been documented. During Thanksgiving in 2024, a massive alligator nicknamed Godzilla was filmed dragging an adult Burmese python through the Everglades. In another widely reported incident from 2023, a Florida resident captured video of an alligator consuming a full-grown python nearly 10 feet long. Earlier footage from 2019 also showed an alligator violently shaking a python in its jaws. Combined with a 2023 U.S. Geological Survey report identifying alligators, cottonmouths, indigo snakes, bobcats, and even bears as documented python predators, the evidence suggested something remarkable was unfolding. But before declaring victory, scientists urge caution. Most of these successful attacks involve hatchlings and juvenile snakes, which are far easier to overpower than enormous adults. A fully grown female Burmese python can weigh well over 150 pounds and produce between 50 and 100 eggs in a single clutch. Even if many young snakes never reach adulthood, enough survive to sustain a large and expanding population. That's why researchers continue to view eradication as unrealistic, focusing instead on long-term management. Meanwhile, the damage already inflicted on the Everglades remains painfully visible. Many native mammal populations have yet to recover, with raccoons, opossums, and white-tailed deer still existing at only a fraction of their former numbers across the core python range. Marsh rabbits and foxes remain largely absent, while an invasive lungworm parasite introduced alongside the pythons has spread to native snake species, creating yet another challenge for an already fragile ecosystem. Even so, the story may not be one of endless decline. Nature has a remarkable ability to adapt, even if that process takes decades. Every documented predator every hatchling that fails to survive, and every new interaction offers scientists another clue that the Everglades is slowly responding to an invader once believed unstoppable. It won't erase the damage overnight, and it may never restore the ecosystem to what it once was. But after years of watching the pythons dominate the swamp, researchers are finally witnessing something they hadn't expected to see. The Everglades is beginning to fight back, and this extraordinary battle is only just beginning. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to subscribe for more incredible discoveries from the natural world. Leave a comment below, and we'll see you in the next adventure.